I thought my husband of 12 years was driving back from a real estate conference in Denver until an emergency room doctor at Memorial North looked at a crying woman holding two toddlers and said, "Your husband is out of surgery. He's going to be fine." I froze. My hand was still outstretched, waiting for the receptionist to hand me a visitor's pass. Instead, she had just handed me a plastic bag containing Julian's personal effects: his watch, his gold wedding band, and his blood-stained driver's license. I had driven 85 miles an hour in the pouring rain to get to this hospital. When the phone rang at 9:42 p.m., the voice on the other end said my husband's SUV had been T-boned by a delivery truck. I spent the entire 40-minute drive hyperventilating, bargaining with God, promising that if Julian survived, I would never complain about him working late or missing dinner again. I thought about our 8-year-old daughter, Lily, sleeping over at my mother's house, and how I couldn't bear to tell her that her father was gone. But as I stood in that sterile, blindingly white waiting room, listening to the hum of the vending machine in the corner, my terror evaporated. It was instantly replaced by a cold, suffocating confusion. I looked at the woman. She was younger than me, maybe 28. She was wearing a faded gray college sweatshirt, her hair pulled up in a messy bun, sobbing with absolute relief as she clutched a little boy who looked to be about 4 and a baby girl in a carrier. I walked up to her. My legs felt like lead. The plastic evidence bag crinkled loudly in my trembling hands. "Excuse me," I said. My voice sounded hollow, like it belonged to someone else. "Who did the doctor just talk to you about?" She wiped her eyes, giving me a watery, sympathetic smile. "My husband, Julian. He was in a terrible car accident on his way home from work. But he's going to make it." My husband, Julian. I looked down at the plastic bag in my hand. Inside was the silver watch I had bought him for our 10th anniversary. Engraved on the back were the words, "Forever yours, Sarah." "That's impossible," I whispered, pulling his driver's license out of the bag. I held it up so she could see his smiling face, his home address, our home address. "This is Julian Vance. He is my husband. We've been married for 12 years. I just got the call from the paramedics." The young woman's face drained of color. She stared at the license, then up at me. She didn't look angry. She looked terrified. "No," she stammered, taking a step back and pulling her son closer to her leg. "No, you can't be Sarah." "I am Sarah," I said, my voice rising. People in the waiting room were starting to stare. "Who the hell are you?" She started shaking her head frantically. Tears spilled over her cheeks again, but this time they weren't tears of relief. "Julian told me about you," she whispered, her voice trembling so badly I had to lean in to hear her. "He told me his first wife, Sarah, died of ovarian cancer 5 years ago. He showed me your obituary." I stopped breathing. "I'm Chloe," she said, her voice cracking. "We've been married for 4 years. This is his son, Leo, and his daughter, Mia." I stared at the little boy holding her leg. He had Julian's exact same crooked smile. He had Julian's bright green eyes. For a moment, the entire hospital lobby spun. I thought I was going to pass out right there on the cheap linoleum floor. My husband hadn't just been cheating on me. He had murdered me in his own twisted narrative to start a brand new life, 3 towns over, while I stayed home washing his clothes, cooking his dinners, and paying off his $32,000 in student loans. And you want to know the worst part? I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I looked at this terrified young mother who was just as much of a victim as I was, and a terrifying, icy calm washed over me. "An obituary?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet. Chloe nodded, pulling her phone from the pocket of her sweatpants with trembling hands. She scrolled for a few panicked seconds and handed it to me. There it was, a screenshot of a fake, digitally altered newspaper clipping. It had my name. It had my photo from our anniversary trip to Cabo in 2019. It stated that I had passed away after a brave 2-year battle with cancer, surrounded by loved ones. "He told me he inherited your house," Chloe whispered, her eyes darting nervously around the waiting room. "He told me the money from your life insurance paid for him to start his own real estate business." Real estate business. Julian was a mid-level regional manager for a logistics supply company. He didn't own a real estate business. He didn't own a single piece of commercial property. I handed the phone back. I didn't yell at Chloe. I didn't pull her hair or call her names or scream that she was a homewrecker. She was a 28-year-old girl who had been conned by a masterful, terrifying sociopath. "Chloe," I said, looking her dead in the eye, "my daughter Lily is 8. She's at my mother's house right now waiting for her dad to come pick her up tomorrow. Julian doesn't sell real estate. He manages shipping routes for Apex Logistics. He leaves every Tuesday morning for what he calls regional site visits and comes home Thursday night." Chloe gasped, slapping a hand over her mouth. He works from home Wednesday through Sunday," she stammered. "He tells me he travels to his corporate office on Mondays and Tuesdays." The puzzle pieces clicked together in my head so loudly it was deafening. The separate bank account he claimed was strictly for his corporate expenses. The $800 cash withdrawals he made every single week because he claimed his independent contractors preferred cash. The prepaid burner phone I once found hidden under the spare tire in his trunk, which he swore belonged to a fired employee he was investigating. Just then, the emergency room doors swung open and the doctor walked back out into the lobby. "Family of Julian Vance?" he called out. Chloe and I looked at each other. "He's awake," the doctor said, giving us a reassuring smile. "He's heavily medicated for the pain, and he's got a broken femur and a concussion, but you can go back and see him. Just one at a time, please." I looked at Chloe. She was shaking like a leaf, staring down the long, fluorescent-lit hallway leading to the ICU. "You go," I told her, my voice eerily flat. "I have some phone calls to make." She nodded, her eyes wide with a mixture of profound gratitude and absolute terror, and followed the doctor through the double doors. I didn't make any phone calls. Instead, I walked out of Memorial North, got into my car, and opened my laptop on the passenger seat. I connected to my phone's hotspot. For the next 3 hours, while my husband was lying in a hospital bed being comforted by his second wife, I systematically dug through our entire financial life. I logged into our joint checking account. Then I remembered an old password Julian used for everything back when we first started dating. His childhood dog's name and his birth year, Buster82. I typed it into the banking portal for his corporate account. When the dashboard loaded, the balance made me physically sick to my stomach. For the last 4 years, Julian had been filtering exactly $3,350 a month from our joint savings into this hidden account to pay a mortgage. Chloe's mortgage. He had forged my signature to take out a second mortgage on our home, the home my parents had helped us put a down payment on, to fund his secret family's life in Colorado Springs. I clicked over to our daughter's savings. He had drained Lily's college fund from $42,000 down to $12.50. He had stolen our entire future to build theirs. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just staring at the steering wheel. The rain pounded violently against the windshield. I thought about the 12 years I gave this man, the miscarriages I suffered before we finally had Lily, the nights I stayed up rubbing his back when he was stressed about work, telling him what an amazing provider he was. He had played me for an absolute fool, but Julian had made one massive, catastrophic mistake. He assumed I was just a naive, trusting wife who didn't understand how banking worked. He forgot that before Lily was born, before I stepped back to raise our child, I spent 7 years working as a forensic accountant for the IRS. I wiped a single hot tear from my cheek. It was the last tear I would ever shed for Julian Vance. I opened a new tab on my browser and typed in the name of the most ruthless, bloodthirsty divorce attorney in the state. A man named Richard Sterling, who was notorious for leaving cheating husbands with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Julian came home 3 days later in a rented wheelchair, playing the role of the brave, wounded survivor. When I asked him why he was driving 80 miles in the opposite direction of his conference, he didn't even blink. He just reached out, took my hand, and gave me that sad, gaslighting smile I had fallen for a decade ago. "I took a detour because of the storm, Sarah," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You're overthinking things again. You're just traumatized by the accident, honey. I'm right here." I smiled back. I kissed him on the forehead. I told him I loved him. For 6 agonizing weeks, I played the devoted, grateful wife. I fetched his painkillers. I fluffed his pillows. I made his favorite chicken piccata and listened to him complain about his physical therapy. And every single night, the second he passed out from the oxycodone, I went to work. With Richard Sterling's guidance, I used every forensic accounting trick I had ever learned to dismantle Julian's life piece by piece. I compiled a massive binder documenting every fraudulent wire transfer, every hidden cash withdrawal, and every single time he used marital funds to buy Chloe groceries, diapers, and jewelry. I found the forged notary stamp he used to illegally secure the $150,000 second mortgage on my house. I legally transferred the title of my mother's summer cabin entirely out of our joint trust. I opened a new, secure account and moved my own salary and bonuses where he couldn't touch them. And I didn't do it alone. The day after the hospital, I had called Chloe. We met at a discreet coffee shop in Denver, far away from both of our neighborhoods. She was a wreck, completely shattered by the realization that her entire marriage, her children's entire existence, was built on a psychotic lie. But beneath her tears, I saw a spark of the same white-hot rage that was burning inside me. We made a pact right there at a corner table over lukewarm lattes. Exactly 42 days after the accident, Julian's doctor finally cleared him to walk with a cane and drive a vehicle. He came into the kitchen that Tuesday morning, adjusting his tie, and kissed my cheek. "I've got a massive backlog at the regional office, babe," he said, checking his silver watch, the one I bought him. "I'll be staying at the Marriott in Fort Collins until Thursday night to catch up." "Drive safe," I said, sipping my coffee. I waited exactly 1 hour before getting in my car. But I didn't drive to the Marriott. I drove to a sleek, modern WeWork building downtown, the address registered to his real estate business shell company. I walked into the lobby, took the elevator to the 4th floor, and pushed open the glass door of Suite 412. Julian was sitting at a rented desk, laughing into his phone. "I know, babe. I miss you too. I'll be home in an hour. I just have to file some paperwork." He froze. He lowered the phone from his ear as I walked into the room, and then the color completely drained from his face as Chloe stepped into the office right behind me. She was holding his burner phone. I was holding a 3-inch thick legal binder. "Sarah?" he choked out, his eyes darting frantically between the two of us. "Chloe? What is this?" "This," I said, slamming the binder down onto his desk so hard the coffee mug rattled, "is your autopsy." He tried to stand up, his cane clattering to the floor. "Sarah, please, you're acting crazy. Let me explain." "Explain what, Julian?" Chloe snapped, her voice like cracking ice. "Explain the fake obituary? Explain how you told me my children's father was a widower? I just got off the phone with my lawyer. You aren't on the deed to my house anymore. I filed for an annulment this morning based on severe marital fraud. You are nothing to me." Julian started to hyperventilate. He looked at me, his eyes wide and pleading. "Sarah, Please. I love you. It was a mistake. It just got out of hand. I'll end it right now. I'll leave them. Just don't throw away 12 years of marriage. I looked at this pathetic, desperate man, and I didn't feel an ounce of pity. You already threw it away, I said, my voice eerily calm. In this binder is irrefutable proof of 74 counts of financial fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft. I have the forged notary documents for the second mortgage. Richard Sterling has already filed for a highly contested divorce, and an emergency ex parte order was granted by a judge at 8 a.m. this morning. I leaned over the desk, invading his space, making sure he heard every single word. I get the house, Julian. I get primary custody of Lily. I get your retirement accounts to replace the college fund you stole from your own daughter. And if you even think about fighting me in court, I will hand this entire binder over to the district attorney and have you arrested for felony mortgage fraud. He slumped back into his chair, covering his face with his hands, weeping like a child. I didn't stay to watch him cry. I turned around, linked my arm through Chloe's, and we walked out of that glass office together, leaving him completely alone in the ruins of the double life he built. Today, it's been 2 years since I dropped that binder on his desk. Julian lost everything. Without the marital assets to pay off the fraudulent loans he took out, he had to file for bankruptcy. He lives in a cramped studio apartment over a laundromat, working night shifts at a warehouse because Apex Logistics fired him when they found out he was using company time to run his con. Chloe and I, surprisingly, stayed in touch. Our kids are half siblings, after all, and they deserve to know each other, even if their father is a monster. As for me, I got my house back, fully paid off after liquidating his 401k. I got my peace of mind. And every morning, when I wake up in my beautiful, quiet home, I look at the balance in my daughter's restored college fund and I smile, because the man who tried to bury me alive forgot one crucial detail. I was the one holding the shovel.